I work at a funeral home that receives bodies before they die. These are the rules they make us follow. I started working at Hollow Glen Mortuary about 2 months ago, just after I got laid off from a billing job at the hospital. It wasn't exactly a dream role, but with rent due and my options thinning, I couldn't afford to be picky. An old classmate told me her uncle was hiring for night shift help, minimal labor, decent pay, and best of all, no social interaction. That's what she said. It's peaceful, she told me. You'll get used to the quiet. At the time, I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't ask what kind of mortuary needs someone to work alone from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., or why the application didn't have any digital records, or why the contract included a clause about psychological persistence following exposure. I figured it was a typo. I figured I'd just be alone with the dead. But the truth is, at Hollow Glen, the bodies don't arrive after death. They arrive before it. The first night, I met Callie, the day shift embalmer. She was in her 40s, pale as paper, with eyes like water stains. No emotion in them. No warmth. Just exhaustion stretched across a human form. She didn't say much, but she handed me a black leather-bound book that looked like it had been clawed out of a swamp. The title, if you could call it that, was etched into the cover in what I swear looked like dried blood, Night Protocol. I cracked it open expecting procedures, checklists, maybe some old-school medical diagrams. Instead, I found 7 handwritten rules. No introduction. No context. Just 1. Never speak to the bodies, even if they speak first. They often do. 2. If a body opens its eyes, close yours until it stops breathing. It's not awake, it's remembering. 3. If 2 bodies appear on the same table, leave immediately. Do not return until sunrise. 4. At 2:03 a.m., you will hear your own voice from the embalming room. Do not respond. 5. If the front door opens by itself, hide under the prep table. Something came back too early. 6. At the end of your shift, check the chalk tally. If it's higher than the bodies you've seen, something stayed. Don't leave until it corrects itself. 7. Blank. I laughed. Genuinely. Thought it was some weird mortician's humor. Callie didn't. She just looked at me, deadpan, and said, "They're not jokes. You'll see." Then she grabbed her keys and left me there alone. At 11:11 p.m., the first body appeared. 1 second the table was empty, stainless steel and sterile. The next, there was a middle-aged man lying on it. No sound. No door. No footsteps. He was just there. Completely nude, mouth slightly open, skin clammy, but he was breathing. I panicked. Of course I did. I backed up into the sink and knocked over a tray of scalpels. The man's eyes fluttered, but he didn't move. He didn't seem in pain, just paused. Like someone had put him on hold. I checked the records. No incoming deliveries. No pickup logs. No sign anyone had entered or left the facility. When I looked up again, he was staring at me. Not confused. Not afraid. Just expectant. And then, very softly, he said, "I'm not ready yet." I didn't answer. The rule was clear. Don't speak. He exhaled once, a long, tired breath, and then his chest stopped moving. His skin began to gray. I stood frozen for 15 minutes before approaching. There was no pulse. No warmth. He was well and truly dead. His name showed up in the obituaries 3 days later. After that, I started to see the pattern. The bodies always came in at 11:11. They were never accompanied. They were always someone alive, and always about to die. Sometimes I'd recognize them, a cashier I'd seen at the gas station, a man I'd bumped into at the DMV. Their deaths were always confirmed days later, as if Hollow Glen were receiving previews, like death's rough drafts. But the more disturbing part was how many of them moved. A twitch here. A whispered name there. One even tried to sit up and ask me what day it was. I never broke the rules. Not after what happened on my 6th shift. At 2:03 a.m., I heard my own voice coming from the embalming room. Not similar, exact. Right down to the hoarse rasp I get when I'm sleep deprived. It was humming an old lullaby my mother used to sing. I don't even remember telling anyone that song. I nearly answered, it felt instinctual, but I stopped myself just in time. Instead, I sat under the prep table, shaking, until the humming stopped. Then came the night with the note. It was just after 11:11, and for the first time, no body arrived. Instead, a folded piece of paper rested on the steel slab, warm to the touch. I unfolded it with tongs. It read, "Tonight, you'll be the body. Do not resist. We will return what was taken, but not before the pain." I ran for the door. It was locked. My badge didn't work. The lights dimmed, and my legs gave out like they'd been filled with cement. I couldn't move. Couldn't even scream. All I could do was stare up at the ceiling as invisible hands went to work. I felt the embalming fluid in my throat. I felt my limbs being posed. I felt my heart slow down, like something was rehearsing my death before letting me live it. And I swear I could hear them, not people, not even voices, but wills. Presences. Arguing in a language older than bone. Then, nothing. I woke up on the table at 4:01 a.m., freezing, body drenched in some antiseptic fluid. The clock was smeared with something dark and wet. My uniform had been folded neatly at the foot of the table. I staggered to my feet and saw that someone had scratched a new rule into the wall with a scalpel. 7. If you wake up on the table, do not let the next shift see you breathe. And now it's 10:59 p.m. I hear Callie's keys at the front. She's early. I don't know why. But I can't be seen like this, alive. If I'm still alive. So I'm lying still. Eyes closed. Not breathing. And I pray that whatever I've become still remembers how to pretend. I kept my eyes closed as Callie entered. I heard the familiar click of her boots on the tile, always 4 seconds apart, always hesitant on the 7th step, like she was stepping over something no longer there. I listened as she rolled the cart past me, the quiet hum of plastic gloves being unwrapped, the metal drawer creaking open as she filed away tools I knew she'd never need. I thought I was doing a good job pretending. My breathing was shallow. My limbs were slack. My eyes, though they begged to open, remained sealed. Then she leaned over me. Her breath hit my cheek. It was cold. "They almost got you last night," she whispered. I didn't move. I didn't dare. But I felt something drip onto my face, a bead of moisture, thin and warm. I don't know if it was hers. Or mine. Or something else entirely. The night passed without bodies. No thumps at 11:11. No voices at 2:03. But I stayed on that table the entire shift, unmoving, eyes open only when she wasn't looking. And yet I never saw her blink. Not once. When the clock struck 5 a.m., she stood over me again. "You'll need to choose soon," she said, "whether you want to keep watching or be watched." Then she left. And this time, I wasn't sure she had ever been real. I went home that morning, but my apartment didn't feel right. Everything looked like it had been placed there from memory, my memory. The color of my mug was off. My bed dipped in the wrong direction. There was a photo of my parents on the fridge, but their eyes were just blank skin, like their faces had forgotten what expressions were. I opened the fridge to distract myself. Inside were 6 glass jars, each filled with a clear, thick liquid. Floating in the center of every jar was something that looked like a single, human tooth. Except one. That one had a small strip of paper inside, unfurling slowly in the condensation. I pulled it out with tweezers and read the single line, written in the same hand as the rules at Hollow Glen. "Don't pretend to sleep in places that never wake." I didn't return to the mortuary that night. But Hollow Glen came to me. At 11:11 p.m. on the dot, every reflective surface in my apartment, the TV, the window, the black screen of my laptop, showed me, lying on the prep table, with my chest slowly rising and falling. Even though I was standing in my living room. Even though I was awake. My reflection blinked. I didn't. Then it smiled. The next night, I tried returning, hoping someone else had taken the shift. But the parking lot was empty. The lights inside were on, but flickering, not in a broken way, but in a rhythmic pattern, like breath. When I stepped through the doors, the air was cold and wet and expectant, like I had interrupted a conversation that didn't want me to hear the end. There were no bodies. Only chairs. Lined up where the tables used to be. And in each chair, a figure sat motionless, heads down, like they'd been waiting for me. I approached the closest one. Its hands were clasped, skin gray and deflated, like a balloon drained of hope. And when I reached to touch its shoulder, it whispered, "You're late for your own viewing." I ran. But the hallways bent in on themselves. Every turn brought me back to the same room. The same chairs. The same figures. Only now, some were missing. 1. Then 2. Then 5. Gone. No footsteps. Just gone. And then I realized, the shadows were deeper now. Not because the light had dimmed, but because something else was casting them. And it wasn't human. I made it to the embalming room, slammed the door shut, and pulled a table across it. I don't know why. As if any of this followed physics anymore. But it made me feel human. Made me feel like I still had a choice. I turned to the prep slab, expecting to see my own body again. Instead, there was a heart. Beating. Alone. Hooked up to nothing. Not preserved. Just. Beating. Slowly. Wetly. As if waiting. And beneath it, written in dried, cracking blood on the steel. Return what was promised. I think they've been hollowing me out for weeks. One breath at a time. One blink at a time. I no longer remember what my voice used to sound like. When I try to speak, I hear Callie's whisper. Or worse, my own voice, from the embalming room, laughing. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm already gone. My reflection just stares. Waiting. Smiling too wide. The worst part? It doesn't blink anymore. So now, I work. I go in. I sit still. I follow the rules. Because every night, I arrive on the table. And every night, I lie a little more still. One day, I won't need to pretend. I'll just be part of the shift. And someone else, maybe you, will find me there. Just another body. Waiting. To die. Before. It's time. I heard the words clearly, though no one was in the room with me. They weren't spoken aloud. They didn't echo or whisper. They simply arrived in my mind, fully formed, undeniable. The words felt ancient, like they had been waiting to be heard for longer than language had existed. I looked at the clock, 11:11 p.m. again. Always. But something was different this time. The tick of the second hand had stopped, frozen in place, even though the digital numbers still flicked forward. The lights in the ceiling didn't buzz as usual. The air had turned heavy and thick, like water about to boil, yet the room was ice cold. I stood from the corner, where I had been sitting in complete silence for the last 2 hours, refusing to look at my reflection in the black window. But now, I had no choice. The prep table was no longer empty. There were 3 bodies. That had never happened before. One was a child, no older than 6, pale and waxy, eyes open but blind. One was a middle-aged woman. I recognized her, vaguely, from a corner store nearby. And the last was me. Not someone who looked like me. Not a version. It was me. Wearing the same clothes. Arms marked with the same scars. A broken molar chipped in the same spot. And as I stepped closer, I realized the body's chest was rising and falling just slightly. Not enough to qualify as alive. Just enough to mock the boundary. It wasn't dead yet. Neither were the others. But they would be. Soon. And I knew what I had to do. I heard the drawer slide open behind me. I didn't open it. I didn't touch it. But it moved anyway, revealing a fresh set of embalming tools, glinting, sharp, perfectly arranged in a line like notes on a sheet of music. And just beside them sat a tape recorder. Old, cracked, and coated in dust. It clicked on by itself. The static hissed before a voice began playing, my voice. But not any recording I remembered making. It was saying things I had never spoken aloud. Confessions I had only thought. Memories I had buried. Sins I had whispered into pillows as a child. A dark and humiliating montage of all the ways I had failed to be a good person. The bodies on the table began to twitch in sync with the tape. Each time a new word played, a finger curled. A muscle flinched. Their skin began to sweat. And then they all exhaled at once, as if breathing for the first time through lungs made of something more ancient than flesh. I backed away. Fast. The lights flickered violently. Not in random bursts but in patterns, like signals, like blinks from something watching me through the ceiling. The walls no longer held corners, they curved inward, bowing in unnatural ways, warping the space around me. And above the table, in the light, a shape began to form. It wasn't human. It wasn't creature. It was more like an idea taking form, a suggestion of something once buried, but never dead. Long limbs, wrong proportions, a face made of melted memories, half-mirrored versions of every body I'd ever prepared. It bent its neck toward me, and I saw my mother's smile. My childhood dog's eyes. My own teeth, too many of them. It spoke without sound. You've served. You've witnessed. Now you must become. The child sat up first. Her eyes were still blind, but her mouth opened and a sound emerged, not her voice, but my laugh. My exact laugh, as if it had been stolen from some forgotten memory. The woman followed, her hands reaching out toward me like she wanted to hold something, but there was only air. And then, the third body, my body, rose without effort, legs dangling off the slab like it was getting out of bed. I couldn't move. Every step it took toward me felt like it was peeling a layer of something invisible from my skin. A part of me was being extracted with every breath. I screamed, not aloud, but inside. No one heard. Then, for the first time, the lights went out completely. Total silence. Total dark. For a moment, I thought I had finally died. Maybe that was the point of all this, maybe this job had always been a slow walk to my own death, one body at a time. But in the dark, I realized something worse. I could still see. Not with eyes. But I could perceive everything. The room. The table. The thing that had formed above me. And the bodies, which were no longer bodies. They had become vessels. Inhabitants. Puppets. They weren't walking toward me anymore. They were waiting. The floor began to ripple, like the tile was made of liquid glass. The tools in the drawer lifted and rotated midair, slowly aligning themselves around my feet. One by one, they clattered to the ground and spelled a word in a language I didn't recognize, but my bones did. It meant, "Prepare yourself." I fell to my knees. Something entered me, not violently, not like possession in the movies. No. This was quiet. Surgical. Like an old part of myself had finally found its way home, and it didn't need to knock. It knew where I hid the key. I woke up this morning in my bed. Clothed. Clean. No wounds. No burns. But everything felt tight. As if I'd been filled too full. I went to brush my teeth and found blood in my gums, not fresh. Old. Crusted. My breath fogged the mirror, but there was no reflection. And now I sit here, writing this. Not to warn you. Not to beg for help. That would be pointless. No, I'm writing this because it's protocol. Because someone will take the night shift after me, and they'll find the same manual, with the same rules, and the same empty table at 11:11 p.m. They'll think they're watching the bodies. They'll think they're safe behind the glass. But they won't understand, not until it's their own body that appears, still warm, eyes twitching, waiting to be embalmed before it dies. Because death doesn't wait anymore. It books appointments. And at HoloGlen, you always arrive early.